Welcome back to CaMMVetsMedia on WVOX 1460, heard around the world on WVOX.com. Now, before the break, I was touching on China. Now, another interesting story there. The Chinese spy balloon that flew across the United States, we talked about that one, was able to gather intelligence from several sensitive American military sites despite the Biden administration's efforts to block it from doing so, according to two current senior U.S. officials and one former senior administration official. Now, they're saying that China was able to control the balloon so it could make multiple passes over some sites, at times flying in figure-8 formations, and transmit the information it collected back to Beijing in real time, according to these officials. The intelligence China collected was mostly from the electronic signals, which can be picked up from weapon systems or include communications from base personnel rather than images, officials said. But yeah, that's a kind of a scary story there, Ken, that spy balloon was able to pick up some information and was controlled, actually, not just floating through the air.
Yeah, that was quite a stunt that the Chinese pulled, and right before a major diplomatic meeting, which was canceled, and the information they got was probably fairly limited. But thank you, Jack. And as I said, I was down at the Navy League Sea, Air, and Space Conference Sunday, Monday last week in National Harbor, just south of Washington, D.C., and I had a chance to say hello to one of our friends and frequent guests called in today. We're going to chat about the conference, and that is Rear Admiral Terry McKnight, who served in the Navy, led a task force against the Somali pirates, has a book out on that. And Admiral, how are you today?
Great, Ken, and it's always good to be on your show. And thanks. Sorry we couldn't hook up last week, but I know you were there and putting out a lot of good flavor, run the Navy team out there.
I sure enjoyed it. Major conference, all the leadership in the Navy was there. Hey, just before we get on some of the conference, some of the big things, what's your thought on Finland gaining approval to join NATO last week?
It's a great move. You know, they've for years, Finland's always been looked at as a trusted ally, I'd say, and it's a good move to get them in NATO. The more that we can show Putin that there's people that are not happy with what he's doing in the European theater, and I think that's good for the NATO alliance.
Absolutely, and Jack was just going over the episode that happened this weekend at 100 pages or so of analysis about Ukraine. Secret documents were stolen, placed somehow on the internet and social media. What was your thought about that happening? Just the fact that
totally unacceptable. I mean, we've been through this before with release on documentation, and it continues to happen. We just can't put a rubber stamp on this. We need to get to the bottom of who's leaking this information and why anybody would want to do that. I mean, it's just beyond me. I mean, it's just amazing that we're going through this again.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things I got a chance to attend last Sunday at the Navy League of the United States Conference was their STEM Expo, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. Very well attended, constant stream of high school students going in, and an exhibit from the Naval Academy, from Virginia Tech, whole bunch of Navy and Marine Corps and Coast Guard research and development groups were there. Why is STEM so important to the Navy? It certainly drew a big crowd there at the conference.
Sure. Well, it's important that, not only for the Navy, but for our nation, science and engineering, I'm not going to say we've taken a back step the last few years, but it just doesn't seem that people are leaning forward as we have in the past. So the United States has got to be way out in front of everybody. And, we read in the paper every day where China's trying to go. And we just got to get our young men and women, interested in engineering and science and make sure that this country, has a solid, stable base for years to come.
Absolutely. Now, one of the first speakers, I think it was the first speaker, was the Undersecretary of the Navy, Eric Raven. And he talked about the goals of excellence and the importance of strategic partnerships. He said that's the way you get to 1,000 ships. He talked about the Columbia subs that are starting to be built, and also the Constitution-class frigates. Why are those some very important goals for the Navy?
Well, sure. Well, the Columbia-class submarine, is going to replace the Ohio-class that's been out there for many, many years, and they're they're just aging everything. So the Columbia, strategic deterrence, that's where our edge is. And of course, in submarine warfare, we've got to continue to invest in that and make sure we keep way ahead of everybody else. And it's just the other programs, our new frigate. We've kind of, the LCS was not exactly what we wanted. So we've got to get it right with the new frigate, and they've got some great ideas, and hopefully we'll get those things out in the fleet in the next couple of years.
What did you think of the USS Florida, the Ohio-class submarine going out through the Suez Canal, going off into patrol with cruise missiles, going off of out into the Middle East region? Right.
Those were, we reconfigured a couple of those submarines years ago, and that's one of our strategic assets. And it just shows that, hey, we're not, some people say, hey, we've backed off, but we've got to be out there. The United States Navy is the key platform to show the flag throughout the world. The Air Force and the Army and everybody, Marines, ever do a great thing, but you got ships out there, you got an aircraft carrier off the coast, and we've got submarines operating all over the place. That's our first line of defense out there in our strategic maneuvers throughout the world.
Absolutely, man. There was a panel of the senior leadership of the major sea services, and we heard from the Chief of Navy Operations, Admiral Mike Gilday. He talked about the imperative of being on guard and being effective from the ocean floor to the surface to space. Quite a mission for the Navy.
Yeah, it's. We've got our hands full. It seems like if I would have interviewed me 10 years ago and talked about the Arctic, I'd say, well, it's up there. But the Arctic's important now, and of course, space. It just seems like every day there's somebody's launching a space to get the satellites up there. So it's a crowded environment, and space is going to be, if we have a conflict with anybody in the future, space is going to be important. So we've got to make sure we maintain our superiority in space, and like I said, in the submarine warfare, surface warfare, and of course our aviation assets.
I got into a panel in the afternoon on space and initiatives there, and honestly, they didn't say a whole lot, but they did say that. To protect satellites, you need to have many satellites. So don't put all your responsibilities in a limited number of satellites, and then to layer them at different altitudes from the Earth. It was interesting how they came up with some ideas on defending satellites that are needed for defense.
Right. And that's going to be in a conflict. It seems like everything we do from navigation to communications, involves satellites. So we're going to have to protect our assets in space and make sure that that we can use them when they're needed.
Absolutely, and we heard from the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General David Berger, and he focused on a couple of things. He said Marines are Marines. They don't change that much, but they do want their families to be taken care of, and they want the quality of life to be addressed. And that was something that almost all the leadership said in their speeches, the importance of recruiting, attracting the best talented people to the military, and then taking care of their families. One leader said, you got to provide internet, you got to provide a gym, but you really got to have childcare as well to take care of the families of military members. Why obviously an important thing today is the military able to do that, take care of their people, and provide a lifestyle?
Absolutely. When we go out and recruit, a lot of people are recruiting now are young families and everything. So not only do we have to recruit the individual, we have to recruit the family. So like you said, if the spouse has to work and they need childcare, we make sure we have quality childcare. And our commissaries and exchanges have to be equal or better to Walmart or wherever they're going to go go shopping and trying to get goods. So we've got to make sure that, like they said, not only do we have to take care of our service members, but it's a whole family event, and we got to make sure that they're well taken care of when our service members deploy.
Absolutely, and General Berger, comment on the Marine Corps, commented on the need for the amphibious assault ships. And those are like the ones that you commanded. You commanded an amphibious assault ship in your career, and that they are not only now supporting the Marine Corps, but they also have the mission of flying F-35s as a lightning carrier. And one official was explaining that you can shift the mission of each carrier of the amphibious assault ship from the F-35s to more of a humanitarian mission where they may need more helicopters, and to other types of missions supporting Marines. So certainly a key need for amphibious assault ships.
Absolutely. Ken, I could talk this show and your next 10 shows about, the importance of amphibious ships. I mean, they just, what they do and they provide, they're out there. We had an earthquake out in Turkey not too long ago, and, we didn't have the assets to provide, which we've done many, many times in the past. So we've got a requirement now of 31 amphibs. We have to, we can't go any lower than that. It used to be 36, and I don't know, somebody, with a stroke of a pen change it, but we cannot. We should be more than 36, but the bare minimum is 31, and we got to continue to fund the LPD and the rest of the amphibious fleet.
And my colleague Jack McGurk's got a question for you.
Yes,
Sure.
Admiral, I wanted to ask you about the situation with China. Over the weekend, several Chinese warships and planes were detected near Taiwan. Some officials think that they might be planning some sort of blockade of the island. What's your take on that situation?
Well, it's tested. I think they're showing their strength out there. They're going to make it hard for us. Of course, we've had a couple, congressmen they were here visiting Taiwan. The leading officials were here visiting with members of Congress, and Nancy Pelosi was out there not too long ago.
So your show's going to start in a few minutes.
We just have to continue to be on it. Put our guard up because. The Chinese have said that they're gonna go after Taiwan, and everybody picks a year, 2030, whatever. I think it's probably be sooner, but we've got to make sure that we're ready to go because there's a lot of debate. The French, the Premier of France was there in China, and the indications that we got is that he was leaning more towards being towards China than Taiwan. So we got to make sure our allies are with us if something happens with Taiwan.
Absolutely, and we're talking to Rear Admiral Terry McKnight. Just have a couple of minutes left, Admiral. Hey, wanted to give you a chance to talk about a project I saw on your LinkedIn page that your company works on homes for our troops, building homes for veterans and especially disabled veterans. Tell us a little bit about that initiative.
Great. I'm glad you brought that up, Ken. I had the honor to speak, and we opened up a home up in Maryland, not too far from the D.C. area. It was the 356 home for our troops. So these, homes are great, and they're built to standards, for our disabled troops, and it really was a magnificent ceremony. I don't think there was a dry eye in the crowd there when the family came down to accept the keys to the house. So it's just a great initiative. There's 70 plus more homes that are under construction right now, and we need to continue to take. You mentioned earlier taking care of our families, but we also need to take care of our veterans who have served our country for so long.
Absolutely, as you did. Rear Admiral Terry McKnight, veteran of the United States Navy. Thanks for calling in and chatting a little bit about the Navy and also the Navy League conference in Washington last week. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Ken. Always good to talk to you.
Our pleasure. Thank you for your service.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to CaMMVetsMedia on WVOX AM 1460 and heard around the world on WVOX.com. We thank today's special guest, Rear Admiral Terry McKnight of the U.S. Navy. Remember to check out our Facebook pages, CaMMVetsMedia, our Sea Services page, our Iona Basketball Report page, and our West Point Football Report page. And until next week, remember to thank a veteran.